What started as a ceremonial announcement in Ottawa quickly turned into something far more political. And by the end of it, Prime Minister Mark Carney found himself facing some of the toughest questions we've seen in weeks. Officially, the press conference was about the appointment of Canada's new Governor-General, a moment meant to highlight tradition, stability, and the strength of Canadian institutions. A moment about continuity, about unity, about the country moving forward together. But it didn't stay there for long, because once reporters got their chance, the conversation shifted fast. Suddenly, Carney was being pressed on his recent comments about Europe helping shape a new global order. Asked directly whether Canada now sees a smaller role for the United States, challenged on growing political tensions at home, concerns about regional division, questions about transparency, criticism from opponents, and what all of it means for the future of Canada. And honestly, this is where things got interesting, because despite the pressure, despite the loaded questions, Carney never took the bait. He didn't react emotionally. He didn't speculate. And he definitely didn't allow the room to control the narrative. Instead, again and again, he brought the conversation back to the same themes: rule of law, institutional strength, national unity, and Canada's long-term place in a rapidly changing world. And if you were watching closely, this wasn't just a press conference. It felt like a leader sending a message, calmly, carefully, and very deliberately. Before we break down how Carney handled each of these political pressure points, subscribe to I Love Canada for fact-driven analysis that goes deeper than the headlines.
Good morning, Raisa Patel, the Toronto Star. Prime Minister, you said in your recent trip to Armenia that it's your strong personal view that as the international order will be rebuilt, it will be rebuilt out of Europe. What did you mean by that? Do you see a future where Europe overtakes the U.S. as the center of the world order?
Well, I think there's a direct line to what we're celebrating today. I think we are celebrating the constitutional role of the Governor-General. And other Canadians are celebrating Madame Arbour's willingness to serve in that role, which is a belief in democracy, the rule of law, that we're all equal before that law. And imperfectly, the international system had variants of that. Madame Arbour's part of her very distinguished career was to make sure that those who transgressed in the most egregious ways those rules, norms, standards were prosecuted and brought to justice. That system, as I've observed in the past, and I'm not alone in making these observations, has been greatly weakened and needs to be rebuilt, and rebuilt perhaps in a different way, but rebuilt based on the same principles. And Canada, the European Union, the United Kingdom, Australia, other countries share very firm convictions with those principles, and we will work together to rebuild. And obviously there's a critical mass in Europe of countries, 27 members of the European Union, but then a broader grouping that you saw in that meeting in Armenia, over 50 countries that have some form of association with Europe and either fully support or are moving towards those principles. So that's what I meant by those comments, and I stand by them.
Alberta Separatists say they have more than 300,000 signatures to potentially trigger a referendum vote. What will you do to stop that referendum from winning?
Well, there's a couple of things. One is again, keeping with the discussion today, there's the rule of law, there's the Clarity Act, which has been opined upon by the Supreme Court. Not at the same time when Madame Arbour was sitting on the Supreme Court, but has been the judgment passed there, and any referenda in any part of Canada need to be consistent with that. As you know as well, there's a judicial challenge separately but relatedly by Indigenous nations in Alberta regarding the question. So those processes have to be followed through, but. If you bring it into, so I'm observing that because of the solemnity of the moment that we're observing today and celebrating today, but if you bring it into my day-to-day responsibilities and those of the government, it's to continue to act as we have from the start, which is in the spirit of cooperative federalism, making the country work, making it work for Albertans, making it work for Indigenous peoples, making it work for all Canadians.
There's an expense program for former governors generals that allows them to claim up more than $200,000 a year, and that's on top of their expenses. And the reimbursements last year totaled more than $550,000. A Privy Council report in 2019 said there wasn't enough transparency around this, that Canadians should know exactly how that money is being spent and by who. And it called for more transparent public reporting. Do you think this program should continue? And if so, will you commit to ensuring that there is more, the details about how this money is spent and by who will be made public?
Well, thank you very much for that question. I'm not familiar with the details that you're quoting. I'll look into it, ensure that, as you say, that there's adequate transparency around the expenses. I'll just observe that the Governor Generals have served our country with distinction, and in the cases in their post time after being Governor General, continue to serve Canadians through their charitable and other foundation activities, for which I'm personally grateful, and I think all Canadians are as well. Thank you.
Do you think that the details of that should be public? And to both of you, what is the Governor General's role right now, do you think, in promoting national unity at a time when it looks like there could be a referendum on separation in Alberta, and as well a party that wants one in Quebec could return to power?
So I'll begin. I think I answered the first part of your second question. I will follow up with you. With everybody, transparently. In terms of the Governor General represents all Canadians, and I think very importantly represents what's at the heart of our institutions and the spirit of Canada, that we're all equal. The rule of law applies to everyone, the powerful as well as the powerless, that we believe in democracy and the processes. So with respect to the many great strengths of this country, they're as appreciated in my home province of Alberta as they are appreciated across the territories where I was born and across this great land. And the Governor General's role is institutional in the sense of very clear constitutional responsibilities that are called into need from time to time, but also to represent Canada at home, best of Canada to Canadians and abroad.
I would like to ask, your resume was awfully impressive, and the Prime Minister certainly finds it impressive. And yet at times there have been political parties in this country who've taken issue with your work. And I'm going to reference the comment in 2008 of the Treasury Board President at the time, Vic Taves, who, after you concluded your work with the UNHCR, called you, and I'm quoting from his words in the House of Commons, disgusting. And just yesterday, a senior aide to former Prime Minister Harper, Howard Anglin, also former Chief of Staff to Jason Kenney, tweeted out, anybody but Arbour. So there's a point here, is there's conservatives in this country who took issue with you as a, quote, judicial activist and so on, and human rights. And I wondered how you might bridge or seek to make bridges with conservatives who might not be so happy with your appointment. And I think you were probably, Prime Minister, you were probably at the Bank of Canada at the time. I wonder if you'd taken notice of Mr. Taves' comments and what you think about conservatives who didn't seem to have much respect for Ms. Arbour's work at the UNHCR. Madame?
Well, I can tell you that, as I said before, we live in a country where there's a great free space for expression of contrary views, even at times expressed in very robust fashion, and I have immense respect for that process. I will reach out not only to those who agree with me. The kind of cheerleading mode, I think, is not always conducive to change and to progress. I will reach out to anybody who wishes to engage with me, to debate, to discuss. I will listen, and I hope in due course that I will manage to persuade those, particularly those who may doubt my integrity, that I'm not sure I could do much more to try to persuade them otherwise on the basis of what I've done before. But going forward, I will engage.
Thank you.
I'll make three observations. One is, sorry, don't want to shortchange you, David.
Right.
The first is that I think history has shown that the judgments of the UNHCR at the time, how correct they were, the crimes against humanity and others that were addressed. The first observation. The second is I don't want to extend into a partisan characterization of this. This is an institution that belongs to all Canadians, all political parties, but truly all Canadians. All Canadians today and in the future, too, because what we do with the institutions we serve resonates down through the years, and it's part of what I referred to in my remarks in French about the example and how the institutional change that Madame Arbour has brought isn't just about the institution, but the norms and the standards that have changed. And my third observation is that the sun is shining. It's spring. It's a time of hope, confidence, dignity, and a bright future for our country.
And when you step back and look at the entire press conference, one thing becomes pretty clear. Prime Minister Mark Carney never allowed what was meant to be a defining institutional moment for Canada to get pulled off course. This event was supposed to be about the appointment of Canada's new Governor-General, about constitutional continuity, about national unity, and about the strength of the institutions that hold this country together. But as the questions became sharper and the conversation started drifting into much more politically charged territory, Carney faced pressure from every direction. Questions about the future role of the United States. Questions about political divisions here at home. Questions about public trust. Criticism, and the future of key Canadian institutions. And honestly, this is where many leaders start reacting. But not tonight. Carney didn't take the bait. He didn't speculate. He didn't get dragged into headlines. Instead, time after time, he calmly brought the conversation back to the same core principles: rule of law, democratic stability, institutional strength, and Canada's long-term future. And in doing that, he didn't just survive a tough press conference, he controlled it. More importantly, he reinforced the exact message he came to deliver from the very beginning, that no matter how noisy politics becomes, Canada's institutions remain bigger than any one controversy, any one headline, or any one political moment. And in today's world, that may be one of the most powerful messages a leader can send. If you want analysis that goes beyond what was said and breaks down what it actually means, subscribe to I Love Canada.